Listen, I know what you guys want. You want to see actual retro motorcycles. This list could have like 20 bikes if we included all the motorcycles like the Triumph Trident or the Kawasaki Z650 because they're sort of retro, but listen, that's not what you're looking for, that's not what you want. Just because you slap a round headlight on your naked bike doesn't make it retro. No, today we're looking at actual retro motorcycles that you can actually buy because I'm also only going to be looking at motorcycles from the big companies. I've talked a lot about the $4,000 little like retro motorcycles from all these random companies that all use the same engines from China and all this stuff. That's not what we're doing today. Also, these bikes are getting sparse, specifically bikes under $10,000. That's what we're looking at. And it's crazy to me, for example, that the T100 isn't on this list. That absolutely, in my opinion, should be a sub $10,000 bike. I know that they did just upgrade it quite a bit, but yeah, if in the next few years they did nothing else to update that bike at all, they just lowered the price like $500 or $800, I would be a happy man because I think it should be more in that $9,000 range, but I still wouldn't buy it. Anyways, whatever. Let's jump into 7 retro motorcycles that are under $10,000 that you can buy right now. Okay, this list would be nothing without the absolute best budget retro motorcycle, maybe the best budget motorcycle in general that you can buy, the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650, and I'm going to include the Continental GT as well in this part for the apparent few who prefer that. I guess cafe racers are just dying at this point. Everybody wants that standard looking old school bike. Now listen, I've talked a lot of malarkey about this motorcycle, the Interceptor, but that's not what this video is for. Let's talk about the pluses of this bike. First off, it's literally half the price of like anything else on this list. This list is a bunch of sub $10,000 motorcycles, and spoiler alert, virtually all of them are over $9,000, but not the Interceptor. It is about $6,000. And man, you can hardly buy any motorcycle for $6,000, let alone a cool looking one like this. Also, I'm gonna say this, the Interceptor sounds great. Like the stock exhaust on it, it's really nice sounding. I know some people have criticized it, and I don't know, the last time I sat on it was like 2 years ago, so maybe with all the Euro 5 stuff, it's been choked out a bit. But yeah, I thought it sounded better when I sat on it than like the Street Twin, for example, that I rode recently. And if you throw some pipes on there, it's gonna sound really good. It's a nice throaty twin and it sounds really old school. Of course, it's heavy, it's underpowered, doesn't have all the tech of the Triumphs, but for what it is, the fit and finish is actually great on these. Like they're really nice, high quality for the most part. They've proven to be dead reliable with a fantastic 3-year warranty. If you're looking for a retro motorcycle that you want to put a lot of non-highway miles on, this is the bike for you. Oh, and look at all of these paint options. Royal Enfield is killing it. I'm just going to say it. Royal Enfield has made so many good decisions as of late, and they've put their money where their mouth is and made some awesome bikes. So just wanted to highlight that bike up front. It's not last on the list because it's number 7. It's just, it needs to be seen. Okay, I lied. There actually is another cheap bike on this list. Actually, there's a couple. Even cheaper than the Interceptor and arguably more reliable, we have the Honda Monkey. Basically, the Monkey is the Honda Grom, made to look like an old mini bike. I actually thought about getting one of these at one point, and I'd say if you're somebody who wants a fun little around town bike, this is it. This bike will only run you $4,000, but if you get one, you have to throw an aftermarket exhaust on it. They're not too expensive, and there's tons of options, but you have to release that beautiful thumpy single cylinder engine because the stock exhaust on these is terrible. But yeah, the Honda Monkey is a great, really cool option, and you don't have to be like a 17-year-old to ride it. I know a lot of grown men, like I see grown men riding these things around. They can handle, you know, a 200-pound dude. So yeah, these have also proven to be super reliable, and they're great looking bikes. I know they're not exactly, you know, the British style that so many of the other retro bikes are, but they're cool. All right, coming in at number 5, though the numbers don't matter. That's right, the numbers on this list are like motorcycle rear brakes. They're just kind of there. Let's talk about the Ducati Scrambler, and specifically the sub $10,000 Scrambler Icon, because you can spend quite a bit more than $10,000 on these. So I think the standard feature of the Ducati retro line is its performance. This is one of the horsepoweriest motorcycles on this list. It's certainly probably the fastest motorcycle in its segment, though it does lose in the torque realm to quite a few of these motorcycles. So if you're after that addictive low end, like high torque feel, this might not be the bike for you, but at 73 horsepower, it's a pretty quick bike. In terms of style, the Scramblers have never really been for me. I don't know why, they just kind of look goofy, sort of. I guess I'm just so used to that like classic British style, these just don't do it for me. They're certainly a more modern or just different take on the Ducati Scramblers of the 70s, but personally, the old Ducati Scramblers looked way better. But yeah, if you want to get into the Ducati lineup without spending a ridiculous amount of dough, this is the way to go at just $9,500. All right, next we have the entry-level motorcycle into the Indian lineup, which is the Indian Scout 60 or the Scout Bobber 60, which basically look like the same exact motorcycle. I wish the FTR was on this list. I wish the FTR was a sub $10,000 bike, but it's not even close. Now, it's really hard to pinpoint what this bike is pointing towards. It is retro, but in what way? Like, it definitely has its own design and style, but it does, look like the old American bobbers from Indian's past, but it's its own thing for sure. Now, for me, this bike stands out in that it is a true, powerful, torquey motorcycle. The Scout produces 100 horsepower, which is a nice number, and 72 foot-pounds of torque, which is incredible. That's almost as much torque as that Softail I rode a few days ago, and way more horsepower. So if you're looking for a bike that has that fantastic cruiser sound, but also has great performance, but doesn't exactly look like an American cruiser, this is the way to go, and it really doesn't weigh that much more than like a T120. So it's not like it's a 700-pound cruiser. Sure, it's heavy, but it's very low sitting, so I'm guessing you don't feel that weight quite as much while you're riding. But yeah, very cool bike. All right, next we have the Royal Enfield Meteor or the Royal Enfield Classic 350. Currently, Royal Enfield's Classic 350 doesn't appear to be available in the US, which is really sad because that is a cheap little cool retro bike that I think a lot of people would consider. There is the Meteor available here, which I guess makes sense because it's more of a cruiser in style, but I don't know if that's what Royal Enfield is thinking, have the Meteor here because Americans ride cruisers. No, American cruiser riders or cruiser enthusiasts have zero interest in the Meteor. So I would say the Classic 350 would sell better here. Regardless, both of them are great little retro bikes. This platform is tried and true for Royal Enfield. Full of character, super reliable, simple, torquey, a little heavy, but all the good stuff. And man, they just look great, especially the Classic 350. That is a proper looking little retro bike. It really does look like a World War II bike, and I love that. It's a bit of a miss for me that it doesn't come with a kickstart, but that's just, that's a minor complaint. I'm not sure what the US price would be if they brought it here, but I would imagine it'd have to be under $5,000. This bike, like the Interceptor, kills it with all the options, not all the extras that you can throw on like a Triumph, for example, but just lots of different color options, which to me is almost more important. All the different color options really transform the bike. You can get something sleek and more modern looking with the paint, or you can get something that looks very regal and I don't know, just royal almost. But yeah, it's a really, really cool little bike. Wish they were selling it here. All right, barely making it on the list is the 9,600 MSRP Triumph Street Twin, and it barely made the list because it's almost $10,000, not because it doesn't deserve to be here. This is the quintessential modern classic motorcycle, excelling at being both modern and classic. It's definitely more modern than classic, but hey, it's a beautiful bike, and one of the reasons it looks more sleek to me is that some of the other modern classics have such a big tank size. This is a 3.2 gallon tank versus the 3.8 gallon tank of the Bonnevilles. And you wonder why this is the best selling modern classic. It's because it looks way sleeker than those big, thick tanked other Triumphs. So Triumph, just do this. Just make all of the gas tanks smaller. They're gigantic. They don't look like the old Bonnevilles, and I just don't like it. I don't care that we'd lose a little bit of range, just make them look a little less thick, okay? The Street Twin is thoroughly modern. It's got all the up-to-date safety features as well as, the 65 horsepower, 900cc engine and 59 feet-pounds of torque at almost every single point of the rev range. It's actually insane. These are fantastic motorcycles. You absolutely get what you pay for. Quality, fit and finish. Triumph does it better than anybody. They invented this game. So for me, I tend to look more toward the retro aesthetic, and that's the simple reason why this bike didn't come out at number 1, though again, the numbers don't matter. But yeah, the Street Twin is a fantastic bike. Now, when you think about old British bikes, you usually think of Triumph and BSA and Norton, but let's not talk about Norton. Think of the W800 as the BSA to our current Triumphs. Literally, because the original Kawasaki W line was essentially a licensed copy of the BSAs for the Japanese and world markets, and the current W800 is essentially the predecessor to that motorcycle, the W1. Now, the specs for this bike are still super lacking. Less than 50 horsepower from an 800cc engine, and it wasn't like Triumph where they lowered the horsepower to sort of like mess with the rev range and stuff and mess with the torque to make it super torquey. Like, they didn't sacrifice horsepower for torque with this bike because it doesn't have near as much torque either. It's got 46 foot-pounds of torque at 4,800 RPMs. For example, the 2017 Street Twin that I just rode a couple weeks ago produced about 13 more feet-pounds of torque at a lower RPM. So yeah, it's got less performance by far than the current 900cc Triumphs, but it's still enough to have fun. And let's face it, the thing looks more like a true classic British motorcycle than anything Triumph is making. It really looks old, and I love that. Like, the engine, look at this engine. This has so much more of a classic look than the liquid-cooled, sort of fake air-cooled engines from Triumph, and that's because it actually is air-cooled, and they could actually build that shape for the cylinder, and it looks just like my old bike. It's got the black paint on the bottom, and it's got that just sort of swooping up cylinder. It looks so good. The Kawasaki W800 is, in my opinion, the best looking true modern classic, so for that reason it's at number 1 on my list. I'm gonna be nice today too and choose not to compare it to the original Kawasaki W1. I'm not gonna do that, guys. I like to do that. I like to compare the originals of these bikes because some of these old versions put the new ones to shame. But whatever, it's a great bike and it's awesome looking. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this. I know a lot of these have been talked about before, but I felt like, if you're new to motorcycling and you're new to this sort of segment, hopefully this video can be helpful to you. These are really the bikes. These are the bikes that everybody's talking about. Now, if you want to spend a few thousand more, you can get something like a Speed Twin or some of the other Ducati Scramblers, for example, but these are really the ones you're going to want to go to if you're wanting to save a little bit of money. And they're all great bikes. All right, hope you enjoyed. We'll see you guys in the next one. Ride safe.